Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and it's my pleasure to have as my guest today former Serra High School teacher, alumni director, and my fellow cheerleader from our Serra High School days in the mid-'60s, Russ Bertetta. Russell Bertetta, thank you for coming on the show today.
Mark Lucchese, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this since we had lunch in June.
Yeah, that was a good lunch.
Hopefully it'll be just as smooth and as much fun as it was then.
It will be, because we're going to share those same memories today.
Good.
So Russell, right now, just for a moment, we're going to cut to the chase and we're going to come back to it. Why don't you tell our listeners how we met?
Well, we met, I can't remember the first time, but we were cheerleaders together at Serra beginning in September of 1966.
That's right. Now, Russell, cheerleaders to you and I and at Serra was cool. But when I tell my Burlingame buddies about it, or when I told them I'm a cheerleader at Serra, I took a lot of grief, okay?
I remember that as well.
Yeah,
and you say that today to kids. When I used to teach, I would say, they'd say, "What did you do at Serra?" And I said, "Well, I was a cheerleader for a couple of years," and so forth and so on. And a lot of them made faces.
Right.
And they
go, "Where's the skirt?" But we're going to get to that in a little while, okay?
Yeah.
So right now, why don't you just tell our listeners a little bit about you, where you grew up in Redwood City and the Peninsula and all that good stuff.
All right. So I grew up in Redwood City, Mount Carmel area. My folks moved to Redwood City in '52. And that first winter, according to what they would tell me, is we didn't have streets or sidewalks. It was just dirt road, and it was an interesting first winter, according to my dad.
Pretty rural back then.
Yeah, it really was. Mm-hmm. Because when I went to kindergarten at Roosevelt, which was on the other side of Jefferson, I used to walk to kindergarten. I mean, nobody walks
those days
kindergarten.
Are long gone.
They're long gone.
Long gone,
And
Russell.
I was able to do that because Farm Hill hadn't been built yet. And so Jefferson was just a real quiet little street where now it's, 2 lanes on both sides and there's just traffic continuously. You would never let a 5 or 6 year old kid cross Jefferson by himself.
Lots of housing going on, right?
So Redwood City was a little bit rural and small town at that time, but it was a lot of fun.
But you went to Mount Carmel, right?
Yeah, I did.
And so in 8th grade, do you remember more or less how many kids you had in the class?
We had 50.
Yeah, that's what we had. So our lives somewhat paralleled. I was at St. Catherine's, and there was 50 in the class.
25 boys and 25 girls.
Kind of split in half. Yeah. When after 8th grade, you're going on to high school and all that. Did most of the kids go to Catholic high schools, or did they split up a little bit?
I think most of us went to either Serra or Bellarmine, and then about probably 5 or 6 guys went to Sequoia, maybe a little bit more than that. But I was all set to go to Bellarmine. I was
really,
I was set to go because some of my real good friends were going to Bellarmine, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to take the train. But then we had 2 guys from Serra in block sweaters, and I think it was Father Ryan, who later was my Spanish teacher, come and talk about kids going to Serra.
Right.
And I don't know what it was, but I came home and told my mom and dad that I wanted to go to Serra.
And it was blue and gold forever.
Yeah, it was. And I used to use that story when we would have open house at Serra. And I'd be, talking about my history class. Before that, I opened up with, that same story about all of a sudden switching. And I said it was like the Holy Spirit came upon me, and I decided to go to Serra, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, when I was in Burlingame, or growing up in Burlingame in the mid-'60s, Redwood City always seemed like it was a long ways away.
Yeah.
And really, it's only, 10 or 15 minutes away once you're on 101.
Right.
Did you feel the same way about Burlingame? I mean, or did you ever come down to Burlingame?
Well, we came up to Burlingame.
Oh, that's right. You came up to Burlingame. Yes.
Very rarely, like as an individual, I was thinking about it last night. I can't recall going up to Burlingame with my Serra friends.
Yeah.
You know, we used to go to Burlingame fairly regularly because my mom's one of her best friends from Presentation High School in San Francisco, Peggy O'Day, and her daughter was Kathy O'Day, one of my best friends.
I knew the O'Days well.
And we used to go up there to have dinner with them.
Right.
And that's probably the only time that I would go to Burlingame. It was like, for us in Redwood City, like San Mateo, 3rd Avenue might have been the demarcation line. You didn't go further up.
Right. When you were at Serra,
Yeah.
did you date Mercy girls, Notre Dame girls, or public school girls?
Well, there was a couple of public school girls I tried to date unsuccessfully. Never had a date with a Mercy girl, but I dated a number of Notre Dame girls,
Yeah.
a lot of them in my sister's class. And I'm going to paraphrase Mike Krucrow. My success with my love life was good afternoon, good night, and sit your butt down. It seemed like it was ill-requited love.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
But there were a lot of cute girls that I dated, but not real successfully.
So,
unlike you, probably.
No, Russ, I was a very shy guy.
Oh yeah,
okay,
yeah,
very
I know
shy.
that.
So let's go to that cheerleading experience that we had at Serra. So tell everybody what was cool or unique about being a cheerleader at an all-boys school. So my Burlingame buddies can finally understand this, okay?
Well, I think for me it was like, I remember when I was, say, 10, 11 years old, watching a lot of Cal basketball on TV. And I remember seeing guys walk in with the big white sweaters and the C, and they were beating the drum, and I thought it was pretty cool. And it was certainly a different vibe then. You were yell leaders, not necessarily cheerleaders,
right, we were
I guess.
yell leaders,
And I remember when I was a freshman, very impressionable, looking up to Chaz Betts and Mike Roque and thinking, oh, those guys were pretty cool. And for me, it was, I always wanted to play sports, but hell, in high school, I was probably 5'3", 5'4", and freshman
and
up.
Sarah was difficult, right?
And I get cut, and I thought this was a good way for me to get involved and meet people. And I had a lot of people that were encouraging me to do it. And, my buddy Jim Opperman and I did it together at the same time. So it was a lot of fun.
I thought so, too. I got my inspiration from the USC cheerleaders one year watching the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
They were with, the game, the Rose Bowl against Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah. That was a great game.
And it was terrific. But I saw these guys, and it looked powerful, man.
Yeah.
They were in charge of the whole stands,
Yeah,
right?
it was. Yeah, it was much more organized, I think, in those days, less spontaneous than it has become.
Right.
We never yelled out scoreboard, that kind of thing. It was all kind of organized spirit.
And we had all the stands filled.
Oh, yeah.
And the guys were all in white shirts.
Yeah.
And there was just, 4 or 5 of us controlling the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we could boom out the, SERRA stuff. It was just fun, man. So
it was, about memories of some of those things. I remember when you were a senior and I was a junior, and we were playing Bellarmine, and of course you remember, we just got thrashed 60-0, one of the most infamous days in Serra history.
Big time.
But I remember we had all these guys there, and we would like to try to do that Serra spell yell or whatever, Serra rules or whatever else, and try to make it echo off the Cary School Hill. Remember that? And we were all proud. Oh, we did this great cheer, but we're getting our ass kicked here.
Getting blown away.
Yeah.
Dan Pastorini was the quarterback.
Dan Pastorini, and
Yeah.
But the next year, we actually scored, I think, maybe 2 touchdowns. So.
But did you beat them?
No.
Okay. All right. So, Russell, you had the unique opportunity of not only graduating from Serra, 1967, but 10 years later, you came back in 1977 to teach there for 30 years.
Yep.
Wow.
30 great years.
Yeah.
30 really great years. It was... when I was teaching at a grammar school in Palo Alto, at St. Albert the Great. It was, like OLA or St. Catherine's, Mount Carmel, a smaller number of kids. And at that time, we used to play all of our games at St. Francis. And I thought I might end up down there because I knew a lot of people that were at St. Francis, and that didn't happen. And I had applied at Serra at the same time, and things began to materialize, and I ended up at Serra.
Yeah. Where were you teaching before Serra?
It was at a school at that time called St. Albert the Great, and now it's called St. Elizabeth Seton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Great. I had a great time. Great 4 years.
Who was the principal and the dean of men when you were teaching at Serra?
Well, the main was Mike Peterson. He was the principal. He came in my second year, and then we had a number of dean of men's. Tom McKenzie was probably the person who had the longest tenure. Tom Nelson, you might remember him.
I remember Tom, yeah.
He was the dean, I think, my first 2 years.
Okay.
And then we had a few guys that, after Tom McKenzie became the football coach in like 90, there were a few guys that did 2, 3, 4 years. But T-Mac did probably 15 or maybe even closer to about 15 years.
Yeah, yeah. What classes do you teach at Serra?
The first 3 years I taught sophomore English.
No kidding.
Yeah, I had 5 sections of sophomore English.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah.
Did USF and your teaching credential prepare you to teach English?
Well, I started off as an English minor, actually. And so I had a few writing classes and things that I enjoyed a lot. Thought I had a little bit of skill at writing. And so to a degree, it was a lot of learn on the job.
Yeah. One chapter ahead or something?
No,
okay.
quite that. But I will tell you that I think it was my first year, and we read Catch-22. And I think I had the Cliff Notes helping me out with that.
Sure.
Because that book was as confusing as you can imagine.
Difficult
read.
But
no, I got a little bit stronger as the years. But it was certainly beneficial for me because that first year I was coaching JV football. And so we started football practice, double sessions, 2 weeks before classes started. So I had, out of the, say, 150 kids that I was teaching, probably about 40 of them, and they were all the hotshot guys, were in my English classes. And so they got to know me before classes started.
Right.
And I think most of them thought, oh, this guy's decent,
Mm-hmm.
And so that really kind of broke a lot of ice for a first year guy. It really helped me.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
So you taught English for a couple of years?
I taught 3 years of English, and then in 1981 or something, I moved. I moved to the history department.
Mm-hmm. And how many years in that? Or was that the duration?
From there to 2001.
Yeah.
And then in 2001 as I became the development director.
Yeah.
So I had to leave the classroom.
You want to share a couple of experiences of teaching in an all-boys Catholic high school?
Well, it's better than teaching in an all-girls Catholic high school, I think.
Yeah.
At least it was for me. It was... I remember when I interviewed for the job, it was not Mike Peterson, but it was this Father Schipper. And he told me right off the bat that he wasn't really keen on hiring alums as teachers because he felt that too many of them wanted to make Serra like it was when we were students.
Back in the day.
Yeah. And so I was certainly aware of that. But, it was a great experience. I loved every day. It was.
Right.
I never woke up and said, "Oh God, I got to go to work."
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to separate one day from another. You have different discussions or kids doing something, and and I rarely had anybody who was a serious pain in the ass.
Right.
Luckily. The relationships between them and me was good enough that, I didn't have a lot of jerks. No. And I like teaching juniors because that's the make or break year for guys that want to go to college. And by that time, everybody at Serra was going to some college, and so they concentrated a little bit more than sophomores.
Yeah, great.
So,
as time moved on, did you get involved in coaching or drama or anything like that?
Well, yeah, I coached pretty much right from the beginning. I first year I did that football, and then I did freshman basketball, and then I took a couple of years off, and then went back to basketball, and basically coached basketball for, I think, 16 years.
Wow.
And then I coached JV golf.
Oh, no kidding, really? Did you play a lot of golf yourself?
I was starting to play more then. I had grown up with golf. My dad was a golfer. And then I would play a lot with my father-in-law up and when we would go to Arnold.
Great.
So I certainly never tried to help a kid with their swing.
Right.
By the time they were playing golf, most of them had some kind of coach who was helping them out or whatever. So my thing was just to organize them, match the guys up that I thought could play well against each other. And, I think my first year we were like 4-8. And then by the end, we won a league championship and had a lot of fun.
Oh, I bet you played it.
And no one really cared. The only people that really cared was us. It wasn't like a basketball game when you got all kinds of fans out there going, oh, God.
I bet you played some pretty cool courses, huh?
Oh, we did, yeah. Our home course was Peninsula.
Yeah.
So that was the best one. But we played SI, and I can't remember. Oh, that was at Sharp Park. Bellarmine had decent course down at Santa Teresa. Summit in Milpitas, and so it was good.
Great. Did you happen, while you were teaching, did you go to a lot of events, like all sporting events? Did you go to the, when there was a play at Serra, stuff like that? Did you attend a lot of things?
I did, and I think most of us all did.
Yeah, that's great.
At least my group that are still some of my best friends today.
Yeah.
Our lives were kind of built around Serra.
Yeah.
We would go to home basketball games.
Right.
We'd go to all the football games and some baseball games. We would go to the crab cioppino dinner, the tri-tip dinner, all those different types of things. And I tried to go to the plays and the musicals probably more than most of my friends.
Yeah.
Part of it was during that time I was director of activities, and so I wanted the kids to be able to see me at more than just going to sporting events. So my wife and I, and then later my son, and we would take my mom and go see the different musicals.
Yeah.
And Jay Jordan, we worked together for 30 years, and he stayed 10 years after I left. He's one of my best friends today, and so. But they did great jobs. They did really great jobs.
Great. When you were teaching there, was there any female teachers at that time? Is there today?
There's a lot today. There's probably maybe 40% of the staff is female. When I was first there, we had Mrs. Silberstein, Jerry Silberstein. She was the librarian. And then we had a female science teacher, Marcia Zimmerman, and those were the only ones for a while. And then over the next few years in the early 80s, we usually had one or two.
Yeah, and then it grew from there.
Yeah.
Was there any talk ever of going co-ed?
There was at one particular point, probably in the late 80s or maybe early 90s, when there was some talk. But the archdiocese, if my memory serves me correct, they were opposed to Serra thinking about going co-ed because they felt it was going to close Notre Dame and or Mercy.
Oh, right, cannibalize
and they
schools.
And we didn't have the facilities.
Yeah,
you
right.
know, we were 12 acres, landlocked.
School wasn't big enough.
Yeah, we only had one gym. There was really no room to expand and so forth. And so, that talk didn't last really long.
Okay.
And I think that. I think we were all glad that it didn't.
Okay, so you taught for 30 years at the school.
Yeah.
You must have had a few interesting folks that went on to do big things.
we had a few.
Maybe you could name a couple of guys.
We had one guy that probably nobody knows much of. His name is Jim Lanzone, and he right now is the CEO of Yahoo. So
really,
yeah. So I had Jim in class, and he was on my basketball team. But I think you're probably talking about number 25 and number 12.
Yep.
Tommy and Barry.
Yeah.
So I had Barry twice, sophomore English and junior U.S. history, and then I had Tom in my AP U.S. history class. And then he was the center on my JV basketball team.
Yeah. Any issues with either of the boys?
Tom was really mellow. He was a good student, and he's basically just like he is when you see him on TV. He's always a nice kid. And Barry, I never really had any issues with Barry. I know some guys did.
Yeah.
Barry, people ask me when I tell them I had Barry Bonds, they said, well, what kind of student was he? And my answer, and I think he would nod his head, is that Barry knew that his future was going in a different direction. I had him, like I said, twice, and he was never a problem. He still teases me when I see him about me catching him cheating on a vocabulary test, But hell, I probably caught 20 guys over the course of the years, trying all kinds of different ways to do that. One thing I will say about Barry, there was when he was a senior, the varsity basketball team was having some preseason conditioning. And so Barry and these 2 or 3 other guys thought that they could do it on their own. And I told Kevin Donahue, who was our coach, that if these guys don't want to work out with the team, maybe you shouldn't have them on the team. And Barry came up to me one day after class, and he said, "Why are you telling this to Mr. Donahue?" And I told him why. And he accepted that, and he says we're going to be fine. But I always respected Barry for coming up and asking me instead of sniping behind my back or whatever. Right. So I still see Barry once in a while around the ballpark or different things, and we have a good relationship.
Good. Yeah, because you did a little bit of docent work.
I still do. Yeah, still.
Yeah, great.
Tour guide, not a docent.
Okay.
Docents stand in one place and have you come to them.
You are a tour guide.
I'm a tour guy.
All right. Okay. So, Russ, back in our day, the mid-'60s, the priests and the lay teachers could get a bit rough.
Yes.
And what I mean by rough is if a student was misbehaving, they would probably grab the largest book in the room and smack you over the head, right? To get you in place. Yeah. Talk about concussions, right? But anyway, I remember 3 in particular. There was Mr. Medrano, who taught Spanish. Mr. McGee taught Spanish. And the great Frank Nolan, the varsity basketball coach. Those guys all had short fuses, man. Do you remember those days of getting? Yeah.
Luckily, I never was on the receiving end of any of that, but I do remember Babe Medrano with Lou Barris, who I had gone to Mount Carmel with, and was the biggest kid in our class.
Yep.
And then I think it was Bill Sirigliano when they got in trouble for something, and he brought them up and whacked them over the knuckles with a ruler.
Okay, yeah.
And when he did lose, the ruler snapped in half. And I don't know if he ever did that, continued to do that, but because then he left and went on to Cap or someplace. But yeah, there were guys that did that.
I remember Babe Medrano in a Spanish class. Somebody was screwing. He just ran down the aisle, flipped the desk over. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, that was a different day. And
when did that? None of that went on while you were teaching.
You know, when I started in '77, that might have been a very, very rare occurrence.
Yeah.
And but
over the years, it's
over
kind of
the
gone
years,
away.
it just it just you just can't do that. And teachers that we hired were certainly better trained and better prepared than guys that maybe were getting their jobs in the early 60s.
Speaking of the teachers, while you were there during the 30 years, did you have many priests still teaching class, or had that all gone lay?
The first few years, there was maybe 4, and by certainly the middle 80s, there was maybe 1. And then by the 90s, there was nobody except for Father Howell, who was the president, and then Father Bradley came in as the chaplain, and that. So
they had lay teachers teaching religion, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
One of my best friends, Tom Monahan, he taught sophomore English, and he, a great representative of his faith, and a really good teacher.
Yeah. Okay, so looking back at your teaching career, your 30 years, what do you think is your most notable accomplishment?
Well, that's I thought a lot about that.
Yeah.
And I think that I like to think that I left something of a legacy at Serra. Number one, I tried to be a good teacher. I tried to encourage my kids to be good students, and I think that I was someone they could like and trust, and that they had confidence in me. But when I became the alumni director, that was my best job. That was my favorite thing. I think I was born to do that job.
Yeah.
And so I like to think that that's where I really left a mark.
So what was an alumni director?
Well, it started off where my job was, and I didn't get paid the first year. I didn't get a stipend.
Right.
I didn't even get a class off. But they wanted to see how it would go. Basically, it was designed to increase alumni involvement, develop some alumni activities to bring the alums back to campus, or be more interested in the school. And so I think that I tried to create a number of different venues that they could come back. And I think that's probably my lasting legacy, is that alumni involvement has increased. On the concrete side, I was probably the main guy of starting the Hall of Fame, the Athletic Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Then a couple of years after that, we created what's called the Alumni Award of Merit, which is kind of like the non-athletic Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So John Lesqua, who was in your class, he got an award for arts. Mm-hmm. And the guy that was one of the founders of Trader Joe's, he got an award for business. So we've had a lot of different guys, and it's certainly an award that is right up there with the Hall of Fame.
Russell?
Yeah.
Not to interrupt, but I'm still waiting.
Yeah. I'm waiting on mine. When the Hall of Fame comes knocking and says, Russ, we want you, I'm right there. But the other thing I think was something that if you walk into Serra today and you walk around the old auditorium and you see all the class pictures, that's Russ Bertetta.
Yeah.
Because I found the original school pictures, classes from 47 to 55, laying on the floor in an office in the old priest house.
Would that have been at St. Bart's?
That was at St. Bart's, yeah. So they had all the class, just like at Notre Dame, where they have all the pictures of all the graduating classes. So I said, I want to start with these, or we're going to start putting them up. And so I got them framed, we got them put up, and so the first few years there was only 7 or whatever it was, and then we began to add different years when they had their reunions, and eventually now every class is represented. Well, so that's something that I walked by there and I said, that's me.
Interesting you said that. A few months back, I interviewed Ryan Ofield, who's a teacher at Mercy, and he happened to be over at Serra wandering the halls, and he saw my class picture of 1966. So that was just kind of funny when he told me that.
Yeah.
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
So good job, Russ.
It's something that, I looked at like when I would go to Notre Dame for something and say, well, why haven't we done anything like this?
Yeah, no.
And so I think I started Career Day,
Yeah.
Which is something that they continue to do. So all those types of things were part of in a sense, the plan to help get alums back to campus.
Yeah. Did you get involved in the magazine Traditions at all?
In certain ways, you know, whether it was selecting stories.
That's the Serra magazine that goes out to all the grads.
Yeah. So I'd help with maybe suggesting certain stories or features on different people. That was one of the things that just to see that grow and change over the course of the years, where now it's a really high class thing. You know, I hired 2 of the women that put that, saw the growth of that thing. Yeah. Sarah Chakeen was her name, and now Michelle Wilkinson. Yeah. So they've done a great job.
It's a well done publication.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Okay, I just got a couple of more things for you. If a young person was going to pursue a teaching career, what kind of advice would you offer?
Be prepared. Get your credential, number one, and find yourself a mentor that you're working with. That's at whatever school, someone that you can talk to, and then I think is be open to what your students are interested in. I used to tell the new teachers when MTV was a big thing, watch an hour of MTV every week so you know what they're listening to, what they're watching, all those types of things. Because if you just ignore that, you're never going to know who those kids are outside of your classroom.
Yeah.
And what are the things that are influencing them. So, and give the kids the credit that they deserve, because they're not stupid. They're bright kids. And if you treat them like I'm up here and you're down here, it's not going to work. You have to be honest with them, and you have to treat them as, you're still the teacher, but you have to listen to what they have to say. Yeah. And I think that, that helped me a lot. Yeah. But, I had Jim Monahan, who was one of our guys, Dave Stevens. So those guys were real helpful to me, not just talking to them, but just watching them, seeing them in action.
Yeah. Great advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
There's a rumor out there that you are going to be married 40 years this December.
This December.
Little shout out to your wife.
Little shout out to my wife. And honestly, as we were talking earlier, I would not have met my wife. You talk about, what if I had taken a job at St. Francis?
Right.
I would never have met my wife because she was the older sister of one of my best basketball players ever. And I used to look at her in the stands and say, okay, am I ever going to get enough guts to ask her out? And his senior year, there was two guys that were part of, I can't remember what organization, but they would make things to sell. Junior Achievement. They would make things to sell. Boy. And their thing was a takeoff of Billy Ball.
Oh, really?
For Billy
really?
Martin.
Yes.
And so the kids used to call Coach Kevin Donahue a Wally. And I'll let you, I won't say why, but they used to do this Wally Ball spell out, and these two guys made a T-shirt with a basketball with a pair of glasses and a mustache, and it said, Wally Ball, catch it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So it was towards the end of Mark's senior year, and I was selling T-shirts after a game, and my wife, my future wife, came up, and I said, hey, would you like a T-shirt? She says, do you have a small? And I said, no, we don't. But if you come back next week, I'll make sure I have one for you.
Oh, boy, making the moves.
And I said, could I take you out for a drink afterwards? So that all happened. I had the shirt ready. Some things happened in between her coming to the game and the end of the game, and she left.
Uh-huh. Oh, really?
Yeah, she was not happy with me.
Okay.
And so then I called her, I sent her a note with a dozen white roses. Asking for forgiveness.
Yes.
And could I get another chance? And so that was at the end of January 1983, and we were married on December the 10th, 1983.
Boy.
So
Russell Bertetta, the romantic.
Yeah, who would have ever thought after all those strikeouts with those Notre Dame girls?
And what about, you have 3 sons, right?
I have 3 sons. One of them is in town, the oldest. He lives in Austin, Texas, and he brought his grandson out. Josh has been a Bengal fan since the first Niner Bengals.
Game.
He fell in love with the white Bengal tiger.
Oh, right.
And he's been a Bengal fan. And then his second son, Kaya, is a Niner fan.
Yeah.
So I scrounged around, got us some tickets, and the 4 of us, and with my second son, Patrick, we're going to the Niner Bengal game
this Sunday.
Yeah,
Terrific.
so that'll be fun. Yeah, and then I have Patrick, who's with the Electricians Union now, and he lives in La Honda, and then our baby, who's 32. Yeah, 32. He lives in Asheville, North Carolina.
Wow.
Yeah.
Terrific.
And he does rock and roll posters and things.
I love it.
Yeah. So anyway,
great.
They're good kids.
Russell Bertetta, there's another rumor, okay?
Okay.
And this rumor is if you were to get cut, you would bleed blue and gold. Is that true?
There's still a lot of that. There's still a lot of that.
Yeah.
Sarah was a lot of fun. When we were there, I had a really good time. I made friends that I'm still friends with. And like I said, my 30 years teaching there, I found my wife. I found some of my best friends in the world. And it was a good day. Every day that I went to work was a good day. Yeah. And I still care quite a bit about the future and the success of the school, and try to do what I can to help them out in certain ways.
Russ Bertetta, class of 1967,
67.
my cheerleader buddy. We let the cat out of the
I
bag
know.
today, okay? But it's great stuff, and thank you so much for being here today, Russ.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Mark. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you, and let's go out and continue this at another day.
You got it, Russ. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
I'd like to thank Russ Bertetta, a longtime Serra High School teacher, alumni director, and my cheerleading buddy in the mid-'60s for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small-town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Thanks to my thought partner, Mike Negler, for his guest suggestions and help with guest questions. Thank you to Kathy and Shelby Lucchese for editing and producing, the great Ray Tyler for video, original music by Bray. You can hear more of Bray at braymusic.com. This podcast was recorded on Friday, October 27th, 2023, at the Burlingame Public Library. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this recording, and no part can be copied or replayed without the permission of the Burlingame Historical Society. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.